Ethiopia, a country which has both flown under the radar of many and attracted the fascination of others. Those with a modicum of familiarity with the unique and ancient East African country may have at least a vague notion of Solomonic kings, legends of lost religious artifacts, rock-hewn megastructures, and other characteristic features in the nation's ethos. Often when considering its genesis, the ancient kingdom of Aksum, a once mighty kingdom, which ruled an area encompassing modern northern Ethiopia, Eritrea, and Sudan on one side of the Red Sea, and modern Yemen on the other side, roughly from the 1st to 10th centuries, is pointed to as the progenitor. The Aksumite Empire is not only of interest to researchers due to the iconic megalithic structures known to us, but also due to the sheer amount of potential artifacts yet to be revealed that might elucidate its mysteries even more. Yet, technically, Aksum is not the most ancient, nor most mysterious progenitor of the Ethiopian nation. There is another. The kingdom of Da'amat flourished roughly from the 8th to 7th centuries BC. The kingdom encompassed the areas of modern northern Ethiopia and Eritrea. It's important to note that even the pronunciation of this kingdom is technically a mystery to us, given that around this time the Ge'ez script did not yet have vowel markers. The Ge'ez inscriptions spell Da'emet, which might be pronounced as Da'emat, Da'emat, or Da'amat, Da'amat. Either pronunciation can be used and will be used for the purposes of this video. By around the middle of the last millennium BC, something extraordinary took place. It seems that around this time there was major cultural interaction between the people in the region and those in southern Arabia. This can be ascertained by the appearance of Sabaean inscriptions in the region and sites of notably South Arabian characteristics like the famed so-called Temple at Yeha, located some 30 kilometers or 20 miles northeast of the modern town of Adwa. Another site is the complex known collectively as Hawelti-Melazo, located some 15 kilometers or 10 miles south of Aksum. There are well over 30 known pre-Aksumite sites of significance. Temple at Yeha, for example, perhaps the most well-preserved of Da'amat sites, and the oldest standing building in sub-Saharan Africa, lies in a fertile valley and is a rectangular monumental structure measuring 18.5 by 15 meters, 60 by 50 feet, with walls reaching a maximum height of 11 meters or 35 feet. Though it may have been even taller in the past. The temple is believed to have been dedicated to the South Arabian moon god Al-Makah and to have flourished between the 7th to 8th centuries BC. Perhaps one reason for the temple's phenomenal preservation is that it was later converted into a Christian church. Today, a small modern Tewahedo Orthodox church stands next to it and is home to relevant artifacts such as stylized ibex figures of typical South Arabian style, which were incorporated into the walls, as well as stone slabs with both incised and raised Sabaean inscriptions. About 200 meters, 200 yards from the church enclosure is the lesser-known site known as Krat Be'al Gebri. It is the remains of another monumental structure comprising massive pillars reminiscent of the type found not only at the previously mentioned site of Hawelti-Melazo, but also the Moon Temple at Marib in modern Yemen. The centerpiece is a rectangular stone platform. Wide staircases are built into the platform, indicating formal access and a likely ceremonial function. More research must be done to conclusively discern what the function of the site may have been, though some theorize it may have been a palace of some sort. In addition, rock-cut graves were discovered by archaeologist Francis Onfray in the 1970s. This site, on the lower southwestern slopes of where the temple stands, is referred to as Daro Mikael. These graves include rock-hewn shafts, which lead to chambers wherein are found a variety of artifacts. Rodolfo Fatovich theorizes that at least one of these tombs may have belonged to one of Da'amat's rulers. If the kingdom of Da'amat had a capital, then certainly Yeha would be the most likely candidate, as is the opinion of scholars. It has been speculated that at its height, Yeha may have been inhabited by around 10,000 individuals. In an imaginative reproduction produced by the Deutsch or German Aksum expedition of 1906, perhaps the most famous excavation of the site, the layout of the city is imagined to have looked thusly. It's important to remember that all this is mere speculation, though plausible. As mentioned earlier, one of the graves at Yeha is thought to have belonged to a ruler of Da'amat, and here perhaps some mention should be made concerning what we know about these rulers. The names of 4 rulers have come down to us through inscriptions. What we know is that the rulers had such titles: Melikin, the king, and Mukarib, which is the same regnal title used by the Sabaeans. 3 of these rulers who held both of these titles were Lemen, Rebe, and Redim. Both these titles and 3 names seem to be of Semitic origin. Only the rulers referred to as Mukarib of Da'amat and Saba, a parent precursor kingdom, called themselves Yigdin, or of the tribe of Yigd, which is apparently of Ge'ez origin. The name of another Melikin is Wuren Hewitt, which seems to be of Ge'ez origin, and was probably contemporaneous with the Sabaean Mukarib Karibil Watar. We also have the names of 4 queens, who are Arkin, Semet, Wirit, and Adit. Again, we can only speculate on how these names may have been pronounced. Going back now to archaeological sites, mention should be made of at least one more. Crossing over the modern-day border and into the country of Eritrea, we encounter a site of not little import. On the edge of the town Sanafe lies the small village of Matara. Perhaps the most notable feature of this site is the 5-meter-tall stele. For a long time, this stele lay on the ground in 2 pieces, but was later re-erected by the Italians. Near the top of the obelisk is the disc and crescent symbol, a recurring motif in pre-Aksumite culture. Near eye level is the oldest extant Ge'ez inscription. From it, we learn that the stele was constructed by Agase for his ancestors and transported by his friends. Various other structures have been excavated in the area, as can be seen in these images. The site at Matara was continuously occupied for at least a millennium. One of the most fascinating and debated aspects of Da'amat is the nature of its cultural synthesis. Archaeological evidence, particularly monumental architecture and inscriptions, reveals a profound Sabaean influence. This undeniable presence led early scholars to theorize that Da'amat was essentially a Sabaean colony. However, contemporary understanding paints a more complex picture. It's increasingly clear that Da'amat was built upon a strong indigenous cultural substrate. The local population had a long history in the region with distinct pottery styles, agricultural practices, including the cultivation of teff, and possible religious traditions predating significant Arabian contact. The Sabaean influence, while strong in elite contexts like monumental building and formal writing, appears to have been a layer added to rather than replacing the existing highland culture. The relationship was likely one of intensive trade, cultural exchange, and possibly political alliance or even limited migration, rather than wholesale colonization. Da'amat emerged as a unique hybrid civilization, where indigenous African traditions, creatively engaged with influences from across the Red Sea. Among modern scholars, there are two camps: those who consider this civilization to be indigenous or Sabaean influenced, and those who consider the civilization to have been a mixture of Sabaeans and indigenous peoples. Among the former include Stuart Munro Hay, Rodolfo Fatovich, Ayala Beccari, Cain Felder, and Ephraim Isaac. Among the latter include Joseph Michels, Henri de Contencin, Tekle Sadik Mokeria, and Stanley Burstein. The duration of the kingdom of Da'amat was rather short-lived. Not only does it remain in general mysterious, but the reasons for its decline and eventual disappearance also remain mysterious. At any rate, the kingdom did fall, and was perhaps succeeded by intermediate brief polities before the birth of the Aksumite civilization proper. During this time, those influences from South Arabia became Ethiopian in a true sense, and continued influence from that region would evaporate. Da'amat is important to our understanding of not only the pre-Aksumite history of Ethiopia, but also the history of the region in general and its cultural antecedents. As the title of the video implies, it is an area of much needed further research before we can fully fathom its import. Thank you for watching. I do want to make some clarifications here. The principal way that we know the name Da'amat comes from Sabaean inscriptions mostly, not Ge'ez inscriptions. As well, the visualization of what Yeha may have looked like comes from the Sana branch of the German Archaeological Institute's project, Virtual Reconstruction and Visualization of the South Arabian and East African Cultural Area. This video is not meant to be comprehensive. It is by no means a comprehensive deep dive into the subject, but merely an introductory summation. I could have went in more detail about different sites that we know of that have been excavated. I could have went in more into detail about the specific inscriptions, giving translations. Just wanted to make a brief introduction into the subject. To begin with, please leave a comment if you have any recommendations for future videos or any other commentary. Until next time.